Position of vice chair.
Yeah.
And you can just.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is everybody sitting in it.
Yeah, if you want to see, that should be everyone. You can always go to people if you want to see it.
Yeah. Well, that's gonna clear, we never cleared today, we said it's gonna be live, she's not gonna be. They have no check tax, that comes up traffic. It's all around.
It should go back.
Just the last couple of weeks, it started in. Yeah,
That's the mirror.
I was wondering, if the mouse works.
I'll be 73.
And
You're 76.
I'll be 77. It's flying right by. I mean, it's flying by, man. I know, tomorrow is not as guaranteed as it used to be. Not that it ever was totally guaranteed, but you felt pretty confident.
Yeah, that's right.
I still feel pretty confident, but maybe I shouldn't.
It's the right way to be regardless.
Oh, I'm charging that. You want to rest him. Got plenty of time to say.
Are you?
Yeah, we did go to the beach. Yeah. I've been
Where are you
down
going?
there.
Yeah, south, right in the north, yes, the one on Sorry Slopes.
Excellent.
I think we're gonna,
We figured out eventually.
you know, you talk to the.
Last one,
It's not, you know, I was out there surfing one time, right? Yeah, shade, I did it like this instead of like this.
What was that?
It was a dolphin.
Yeah. I took a lesson from the big kahuna.
Oh, yeah.
Translator. I wasn't skating around. Yeah. Usually when they give you lessons in here, you know, you're out this high and they push you down. I says, yeah. He says, you know, hey, so you got your phone. He says, yeah, I says, just in case the man will really come around.
Or I don't know. I think Shane's out the front door still, right?
She's on front.
Okay, awesome, thanks.
Okay, the hour has struck, so I'd like to call to order this joint meeting of the North Public Utilities Board of Commissioners and Sewer Authority for Tuesday, March 28th, 2023. We've got people on the phone tonight, so in order to effectively run the meeting, I'll ask everyone to mute your devices when you're not speaking and when you are speaking. Just state your name for the record. All right, moving on to agenda item 2, which is the public comment period. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak? Okay, I mentioned to Chris, my old neighbor's going to come down and tonight, and he's late, and I may reopen public comment if he shows up. Okay. All right, moving on to agenda item 3, we have to reset the board. Robert Staley was reappointed as commissioner. So good job, Robert. He had a lot of competition.
I think it was 3 things. I think it was my good looks, my sparkling personality, and the fact that I was the only candidate.
There you go. I'll do it every time.
Yeah, maybe not now.
All right. So as such, every year we, regardless if the commissioners stay the same, we have to reset the offices and the board. So all that being said, I will entertain. We have to redo the officers first. So I will accept nominations for the chairman of the NPU board and sewer authority board.
Nominate Mrs. Peel.
I would be willing to serve as chairman again this year, so I have no problem with that.
I'll second that.
All right, thank you, Robert. I'll go through all 3 of these and then we can vote on the entire slate. Are there any additional nominations for chair? All right, hearing none. Are there any nominations for the vice chair for the NPU board and sewer authority? I will nominate Ashana Ben.
I'll second that.
All right, thank you, Michael. Are there any other nominations for the vice chair? All right, right, hearing none. We have a nomination for the secretary of the NPU Board and Sewer Authority. I will nominate Bill Warzika.
I'll second that.
All right, thank you, Michael. All right, we have the three. Are there any other nominations for secretary? All right, hearing none, we have the three nominations. And I will accept the motion to accept that slate of officers.
So moved.
Thank you, Robert. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, William. Is there any discussion on the slate of officers presented? All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say nay. Are there any abstentions? All right, the motion passes. The slate has been nominated and elected. All right, we have appointments also for two committees, as you're well aware. We have an Economic Development Committee and a Finance and Audit Committee. We'll start with the Economic Development Committee first. Are there any persons who would like to serve on the Economic Development Subcommittee?
Well, I'd love to continue to do that.
I'll nominate Bob. Did you nominate for these two?
Do we nominate for the committee, or we just ask people to?
Well, I mean, there could be competition. I doubt it, but there could be. So.
Well, we could go through this in a very formal manner, but let me just ask, who wants to serve on the Economic Development Subcommittee?
I'll continue to serve on.
All right, and Robert?
Sure.
And those are the two, is there only two on the committee?
Well, there's three. Sean is on the committee too. Or he was, I mean.
All right, well, he will be joining us at 6:30 tonight, so we can make the assumption that he wants to continue. All right?
We can nominate him that position, Stuart, and then when he comes and say,
Changes his mind,
Change his mind, you can always
reopen it.
reopen.
All right, we also have the Finance and Audit Subcommittee. And I think Michael is on that, and who else is on that? Williams and Robert. Okay, would you like to continue on the next subcommittee?
Yes.
Very well, all right. We have the NPU representative for the NCDC board, which I believe is Robert.
Yeah.
Would you like to stay on as the NCDC board?
Sure. I mean, if no one else wants it, I'm happy to do it.
Okay, is that okay? All right. And we have the NPU representative for the CMEC board, which is myself. I would be willing to serve another year as the CMEC board representative of the CMEC board. Is there anyone else who would like to have that position? You get to do the CMEC report, that's a blast.
You do a great job, Stuart. And so we also need an alternate for that position as well.
All right, okay. All right, and we need an alternate for that position. Right now, Robert is our alternate. And I think he said he'd be willing to stay on for one more year as the alternate?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm gonna stay on for the next 5 years. But,
Right. Okay.
For next year, I would be willing to do it, but if someone else wants to do it, I won't.
Is there anybody else on the board that would like to be the CMEC rep? Let me say the alternate rep. All right, hearing none, then that would be the list of subcommittees, the NCDC board and the CMEC board. I would like to entertain a motion to accept those committees and assignments.
Stu,
Yep, go ahead.
quick question. So Mike has been the chairman of the Finance and Audit Committee, and Robert has been the chairman of the,
Right.
do we need to do that, or is that?
Do we vote on, or do they self-appoint?
I think we can do it either. We could do it here, or we could do it in the subcommittee meetings and have the subcommittee members vote.
That's good. Oh, that, you do it at the subcommittee level?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
That's the way it's done at CMAC, and
All right,
I think it can be done either way.
okay. All right. All right, well, with all that said, I will entertain a motion to accept those positions, persons on those positions.
I'll make that motion, Stu, Bill, what's it?
All right, thank you, Bill.
And I'll second it.
Thank you, Michael. All right, is there any discussion? All right, hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Are there any abstentions? All right, all those assignments, the motion carries, all those assignments have been accepted. All right, I see two members of the public have arrived. It's all right, I'd like to reopen public comment period. If either David or your son would like to say anything during public comment period, now would be your time. You don't have to, but that's okay.
I'm David Burnett. I'm here to gather information. I think we need to send the right message to young people to move into this community. And I think among those messages that we need to send to kids, including my children, who most of them live out there, is that we're a solar-friendly community. That we have policies that encourage young people to use solar power. I think that's a message in a very broad sense will help this community thrive. I think we have not done that to date. And I think we need to send a different message to young people about their ability to use solar power in Norway.
All right, thank you.
I'd like to dovetail with my father. My name is Andrew Burnett. And the tagline is, and correct me if I'm wrong, a better place to live, work, and do business. It seems to me that a mutually profitable arrangement for the city and for businesses and for homeowners is very much within the purview of that tagline. So, you do what is necessary to make that so. A better place to live, work, and do business.
All right, thank you. While you're in luck, tonight on the agenda, under item 7, we have a solar power presentation. So imagine that. All right, I will close the public comment period unless there's anyone else from the public that would like to speak. All right, and we'll move on to approval of the minutes. I trust everyone's had a chance to read the minutes. It was in your board package. And when everyone's ready, I will accept the motion.
If that wishes to.
Thank you, Williams.
One second.
Thank you, Robert. All right, is there any discussion on the minutes? All right, hearing none, is there any discussion? I'm sorry, I already asked that. Any discussion on this? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Are there any abstentions? All right, the motion carries. The minutes are approved. We'll move on to the information and updates provided in your board package. We'll start off with the leadership team update. Is there any question or comment on the leadership team update? Good. I had one thing or two things. Anybody have? Okay. Yeah, here we go. Okay, under IT, we had a cybersecurity attack on March 9th, and I wanted to thank everyone here at NPU for being prepared for that, but also to following protocol. Apparently, the phishing attack was identified before it affected the system. So I wanted to thank Mr. Kobe and whoever was in the finance department who did their job. Thank you. Yeah. And also, you may have talked about this before, and I just forgot, I'm sorry, but under the hyper-converged infrastructure, says this will be a significant infrastructure project require a great deal of planning. Briefly, what exactly is the what is the Nutanix system going to do? Is that the cloud service that we have?
No, but it helps us do some of the other services we want to do in the cloud. So Nutanix is what's called a hyper-converged infrastructure, which is a great buzzword for technology. But what it really means is that it takes all of what used to be in separate boxes and puts it in one large stack. The benefit to that is that we are using drives that are faster, we're using less electricity, it's requiring less cooling in the data center to keep that cool so that we can run it, and we have far better performance on a much smaller platform. So the stack that we just put in is about that tall, about this wide, fills the rack. We have 2 racks the size of a refrigerator that are now empty because we converted everything into those small little racks. So that's a big savings for us when it comes to power and cooling in the data center. Plus a longer longevity for that hardware. We can count on that for quite some time. We're looking and planning to do a similar array for a proposed GIS project for the company The nice thing about having that kind of technology is you just basically add more stacks to that pile and it just grows with us all the time. So it's more sustainable, I think, from a technological perspective than what we had before.
Nice. How long have we been doing this?
We're new with this.
Right.
We're about a year into the first mechanics array. We're planning probably another year or so before we get into the second array. And you know, what we had for about 8 years, which is about good shelf life for that technology. We got everything out of it. It didn't always happen.
That's good. All right, very good.
But in the budget presentations that we did, the GIS server that he's talking about there is part of that project. So that's in the budget we're going to be reviewing tonight.
All right, are there any other questions or comments on the leadership team update? All right, hearing none. We'll move on to the financial update. And are there any questions or comments on the financial information provided in your board package? This is.
I have a,
So that's, yeah,
Provided in your board package?
yes. Yes, that's, I didn't get to this.
All right.
so I have a question.
Okay.
I think I have a question. Looking at the comparative income statement, and it's coming up with a net income that's year-to-date negative 134,000, but it was projected to be, per the budget, 7,275,000. I don't know what the drivers are exactly for, you know, bringing us into a loss when we had budgeted for a $7 million profit, but maybe Warren can, no?
What page are you talking about on the second one?
Yeah, page 16. Yeah. The biggest part of that contributed capital was from sewer.
So if we're just looking at operating expenses versus the operating revenues, the big driver there is our purchase power cost this year. If you look at purchase power, we had anticipated our year-to-date at about 25 million, and we're at about 30.
Yeah,
So that is the biggest.
That's the
piece
biggest
of the cost
driver, yeah.
Of energy right there, and you've seen that.
so was that unanticipated, basically?
So that was, again, volatility we've been talking about in the past year in regards to energy. Additionally, if you look at the bottom of the page, there is contributed capital, and that's another piece of that driver. We had anticipated being further along on the sewer plant, and that would have been grant funds that would have been associated with that plant. So the fluctuations of those two things, the timing of the increased cost for purchase power and the delay in the construction on the wastewater treatment plant.
So by these statements, you're treating contributed capital as operating income?
That's in the non-operating income section at the lower part. So if you were looking at the total net income, then that's the number that you're including. So if you just look at the operating income, the purchase power is the bigger driver there. If you're looking at net
So
income,
our operating income really didn't go down very much, considering, actually, it didn't really go down at all. Even with the 24.49% increase in purchased energy. So I guess that's good.
we did make the increases to both the PGA and the PPA in the fall with the anticipation based on our forecasts, even though we did have a significantly warmer winter than anticipated. That is also reflective of less power purchase, but each individual units are costing us more. However, we didn't have as much as what was forecasted based on the warmer winter.
Our sales in every department is up over budget except for industrial, which is down 36% from projected. So is that something that's an anomaly or just going to continue, or?
So I believe that industrial is that same customer that was anticipated to come online sooner rather than later, and because of their delay.
They're like
that's
10% of their projected load.
But they're online now?
They are.
At full capacity, or?
About 10% of projected capacity, at least the projected capacity they gave us.
Do you still anticipate they'll get to the anticipated capacity?
I would anticipate 40 to 50%.
Okay.
There's no real way to know for sure, but based on what the loads were given originally, that's what it's.
And
Still good.
In addition, one of the other cost impacts is the pension. If you look at the pension, that benefits expense, that's a couple $1 million lower than anticipated. When we put the budget together for fiscal '23, we were a little unsure of what the pension obligation bond structure was going to look like for this year. And we do have those, the bigger part of that expense is on the debt service side as opposed to the employee benefit side. You'll see that also in the fiscal '24 budget presentation.
Is there a line item here on this page for that?
The employee benefits.
Oh, it's under
expenses,
employee
they're
benefits,
going up.
okay. Yeah, I see it's 2 million less than anticipated. Okay.
Several moving parts.
Pardon?
Several moving parts.
Yeah.
All of this contributing to
Yeah.
the change from what was anticipated, our plan, our budget, and what actually occurred.
Thank you.
So I'm confused. We, 6 months ago or whatever, anticipated that there was going to be a significant increase in the cost of power to purchase, and we increased our rates to what we thought would be a corresponding increase. That appears to have not happened. Why is that?
I'm not sure I'm following, because we did increase our rates.
Yeah.
And there was some significant volatility. However, we also had a warmer than anticipated winter, so our consumption or our volumes were a little bit lower. So you have that offsetting of volumes and purchased energy costs.
Yeah, commodity costs also went down.
Yeah, our costs went down too, absolutely.
But electric costs are at 5.4%, 5.4 million for the year. That still did happen. They're lower now, but that did happen over the summer when loads were higher and the prices were higher.
The change went into effect in November, and we had been seeing price increases all the way from the tail of the summer.
Yeah, energy costs are up 27% through this point in the fiscal year, for the whole year.
So did we not increase rates sufficiently?
We did,
We did.
but costs are still high. Costs are still high. That's why, like Mike was saying, it's like, we're still, if you're looking at operating income, they're pretty much aligned because we did adjust for that.
So how does, if we invested in rate stabilization funding, how is that factored into the purchased energy cost? Is it reduced by what we took out of the reserves? So this is actually less than what we paid for the energy, 30,600,000.
Yeah, it'll be lower by the amount that we took out of the rate stabilization fund. That's it.
You don't know how much that would be, huh?
About $1 million a year.
A year?
About $1 million a year.
Okay, so it's not radically different.
We typically take it out over the winter period when the costs are the highest.
Yes. Okay, well, thank you.
Okay, are there any additional questions on the financial update or comments? All right, hearing none, we also had the strategic plan update in the board package. Are there any questions or comments on the strategic plan update?
I just got a couple corrections. Couldn't resist. You want them now or? Under number 2, so I think it should be maintain and modernize our infrastructure to provide safety, reliable, and sustainable services. Oh, all right, okay. And then, the other one was under 3, there's a 3 after procedures in the headline, that probably should come out. And then, on the last page, under 5.5, initiated biannual employee engagement survey, buy-in, either one of the two, buy or in, for that one. Well, then that's good.
My intention is in the July meeting, where we're halfway through the year, for the second quarter, to have a detailed presentation of this. So we're making progress. It's a 3-year plan. There's a lot going on, and we have a lot more on the plate than we expected with all this infrastructure money coming in. But I think it's probably good to do a deep dive every 6 months or so.
All right, good. Thank you, Chris.
I have a quick question that, I don't know that it actually fits in the agenda, but strategic plan update might cover it. I think there's an article in the Wall Street Journal today, I believe, about New York State getting ready to pass legislation that would ban all new gas hookups for the state.
Was that just new construction?
Okay.
So it would be if someone was building I saw that, I just didn't read it in depth, but I thought the New York City Council is looking at it for new construction. I didn't know that it was the legislature across the state, but in the instances where it's been looked at, it's been for new construction. It's not like they're gonna go around and start yanking people's, if you're doing a renovation on your house, it would be the same as you were building a new house.
Yes, but I mean, if I have oil in my house in New York State and they pass this law, I can't go to gas, I believe. I mean, it's not just new construction, it's new hookups. I think.
Okay,
I could be wrong.
No,
Yeah.
go ahead.
But I guess my question is, will something like that impact us directly, indirectly? That is to say, will it somehow have some positive or negative impact on our ability to get gas through New York State to here? And is there a potential that we're aware of at the Connecticut legislature to do something similar in Connecticut?
One, haven't heard or read anything about it
Yeah.
potentially happening in Connecticut, but Connecticut legislature probably within the New York legislature. So entirely possible. Something to be aware of and keep an eye out, and I'll check again.
But not on the energy and technology agenda at this
Anything
time.
that's popped up this year, because they're doing, look at Pura overhaul, taking Pura out of deep, they're doing bigger picture stuff going after Eversource and UI. But I haven't seen that one, but that's not to say it could be tacked onto something towards the end of the session.
Yeah.
And two, if there's gonna be less gas consumed potentially in New York, does that mean there's more available in Connecticut? Yeah, so.
Yeah, an LDC or a large gas company in New York State could release capacity and that could become available to others. We have what we believe is the right amount of gas for the near term.
We have extra capacity, so.
All right.
But I'll find the article, send it around to everybody tomorrow morning.
All right, thank you, Robert. All right, are there any additional comments on the strategic plan update? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to agenda item 6, which is the CMEC update, which is myself. All right, the CMEC board met on March 23rd, 2023. As I discussed at our last meeting, the unusually warm winter caused a natural gas price collapse, which created a significant mismatch in the CMEC hedge position where we budgeted electricity at $159 per megawatt hour. We purchased electricity at $153, that was our hedge. The actual LMP price came in at $59.35 per megawatt hour. The Henry Hub gas price for February was $2.40, which was $5.41 below budget. The Algonquin City Gate price was $6.13 per decatherm, which was almost $28 below budget. So that definitely signifies the gas price collapse. Forward market electricity prices have returned to the pre-Ukraine war levels. And CMEC is predicting the hedge strategy will capture those reduced prices starting this month. And with hope, we can get back to 2021 electricity prices by the fall. What do you think, Chris?
Volatility is what's happening, so who knows?
All right.
I'd like that to happen.
Yeah, all right. And last Tuesday, the CMEC board received an email from Robin Kipnis, their corporate counsel, announcing her resignation effective April 7th. No reason was given, only that it was a very difficult decision for her. Robin's contribution to CMEC was immense. She will be sorely missed. Robin is very smart, capable, and is a very likable person, who's as honest as the day is long, and who exudes integrity, all of which was needed while she helped steer CMEC through the rough and often uncharted waters resulting from the Derby Gate scandal including federal indictments of its officers, threatened state legislation that would have essentially ended CMEC, and the onboarding of a new CEO who needed to be brought up to speed quickly in order to operate the helm effectively during the storm. Robin also adjudicated the lawsuit resulting from the departure from CMEC of Wallingford Electric, who disagreed with known exit fees and sued CMEC. And she also adjudicated the lawsuit of our indemnification insurance company who refused to pay a legitimate claim and had to be sued by us. Robin seemingly spent half her time arguing with opposing counsel and arbitration judges. Through it all, Robin kept her composure and all wore a brave face, helping to maneuver CMEC in the calmer waters with fair winds and following seas. There are a handful of people who will be remembered for saving CMEC from ruin, and way at the top of that list, you'll find Robin Kipnis. All right, and that's all I had. Is there any questions or comment on the CMEC report?
I did reach out and express our gratitude for the service she's had and had a very good conversation with Robin.
Good, good. Okay, we'll move on to strategic presentations, and we have two tonight, the first of which is anticipated, the solar power presentation. Very briefly, over the Christmas shutdown, I got interested in solar power. I went down to a company in the end, it was a Sun Power dealer, and they told me that Sun Power will not do business in Norwich, and talked briefly about the reasons why. And I said, okay, well, it's funny you mentioned that because I'm a commissioner on the board. I'll bring it up with them and we'll see what they say. So I asked NPU if they would put it on the agenda, and here we are tonight to talk about solar power here in Norwich and what it takes to get solar panels on your roof, the different options, the hookups, things like that. So how would you like to start this first?
Right. Marilyn and Jeff are the head of our team for solar. Jeff is going to present us what we're doing and where we're going.
All right, very good. So not only I'm going to attempt to run the technology and give the presentation. Wish me luck. All right, quick overview of the presentation. I'm going to talk about the types of solar installations that are out there, kind of a review. I know some of you have heard this before, but it's good to do a level set of what the different types of installations are out there. They do vary considerably. We'll do an overview of our program and how you would go about it. You as an individual, as a customer, we're going to go and look, or as a business, to put solar on your property. And then we'll talk a little bit about the value proposition and some of the things that you guys brought up earlier and how we make this as attractive for customers to do without disadvantaging other customers at the same time, right? That's the balancing act that we always have to do, mutually beneficial. All right, so talk about the solar panels themselves. Again, I'm not a nuclear physicist, but essentially the sun's energy, you have layers of silicon, you have monocrystal, polycrystal, or now they have the thin film, which is really neat. My neighbor's house has a actual fiberglass shingle that has the solar built into the shingle. And so when he redid his roof, solar is not, it's not what the solar caused the roof to fail, the solar is the roof. And so that's really, really neat to see, but essentially, this is a technology-driven industry, and technology continues to advance, and that really helps us because the more efficient they become, right now the best panels out there are only about 20% efficient. Right? So that's 20 watts per square foot. So
Jeff, my sister just replaced her roof at a cost of $22,000. What is it going to cost with?
We'll get to that. Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, that's the base technology, and then this is a good. I can use this new thing I learned today. I can use the mouse to show as a pointer. So this is how a typical residential system would be set up. So this is a grid-tied system. This is different than a house out in the middle of Vermont where it's 10 miles from the nearest power and it's standing alone. This is what we have here in Norwich. We have utilities available. You need that because there's times when the sun doesn't shine. You need that energy. It flows into the home through the meter, and then you have. After the meter, you have an inverter, which all solar panels produce DC energy. It's at a higher voltage, but similar to a car battery. And then that gets converted to AC energy, which is what we use in our homes. And the first place that goes is to satisfy the use in the home. So heating, air conditioning, stove, lights, you name it. And as I go through here, I'm going to talk about how that's really what you want to do. You want to size the system so that the majority of those electrons get consumed on site. That's the most efficient way to bring the greatest value from solar. But as I go through, I'm going to talk about different types of metering and things like that. Because if, say, you had a day in the spring when you're not home, the sun's shining, the system's at peak production, and there's very little load in your home, we are going to receive it back from the customer to the utility. We're going to redistribute that to other customers. There's a cost associated with that, but there's also a benefit associated with that. And I'll talk about both of those and how we meter that as we go forward. All right, here is one that we have here in Norwich. And this is on Brownwood Lane. Typical installation, great, no trees in the front yard. This house faces south, so that's the primary. Again, there's so many variables, the angle, everything is shaded. Makes a huge difference on the production and ultimately the cost effectiveness of these systems. Here's another one. Again, just want to be upfront about the rumor that's going around. When solar companies say you can't do solar in Norwich, we don't subsidize solar in Norwich on the backs of our other customers, but we do everything we can within our power, within our team directly to support this. This is a good example. This individual built this overhang, I don't know what you call it, and installed solar themselves. So we used our engineer to make sure the interconnection standards were correct and everything was safe, but allowed them to install this system. Again, this is something where we can facilitate as a municipal utility. So this is a standard meter setup. It's the same residence that we just showed. And basically, this meter here is metering the output of the solar system. It's very important to know exactly how much your solar assets in the community are generating at a given time. It changes how our system operates, how our loads fluctuate, and things like that. It also lets us know how much customers, and I'll talk about this later, how much customers are consuming within the home and how much is coming back to us as a utility. So essentially, this conduit here, it comes back from the solar panel into the meter, then, or actually to the inverter first, then to the meter. This is a disconnect so that the system can be isolated. That's all the building department's requirements. It's IEEE 1547, but there's a UL listing associated with that they make sure everything's installed correctly and works with that. And then it goes back into the panel, like we showed before, and back out through their utility meter. This utility meter, we use a commercial grade meter. It reads in both directions, which is delivered to the customer and how much is received back to the utility. It has the intelligence to figure that out. This is another installation in Norwich here. This is a Tesla Powerwall. Everybody's heard about it. We actually have one. It's on Cranberry Pond Lane. And we'll talk a little bit later about batteries and how they integrate and how they can be beneficial in this as well. 539 Norwich Ave. This has been up for almost 7 years now. Business put this on 157 kW system, so pretty good size. Most of the residential is around 6 or 7. But again, they follow the same model that the majority of the energy is consumed on site. So that creates a good business case for them.
Right. Yeah, can you hold for a second? Sean, is that you joining us? Sean? Okay, all right, continue, Jeff.
This is the solar garden. We talked about this before. So this is a shared asset with CMEC, but it is located here in Norwich. This is the old Rogers Road transfer station or dump, for lack of a better term. About 3.5 megawatt system there. And we have the one up on Stott Ave, portion of the Stott Farm. That's about 8 megawatts of energy as well. So 9,300 megawatt hours a year. We generate right here in the community, consume right here in the community of clean renewable energy. So it's about 3% of our total load for the year.
It's probably worth noting that at the council meeting on Monday, the sort of Canterbury Turnpike folks that are opposing Business Park North made a big issue about opposing any kind of solar arrays in Business Park North, even though we had set aside land to do that.
They were talking about chemicals used to do weeding.
Herbicides and also these failure of the panels leaching heavy metals into the ground, which I've never heard that.
I don't think they have.
I've never heard of that either. You know, and one of the things too, if you go back to the 539 Norwich Ave, you know, by putting it on the roof of a business, that's free available space, right? So you're not taking up free land, but the case in the business park that Bob brings up is this is land that couldn't be used for development, so it could potentially increase the value, you know, by having solar there. But there are green practices that you can do, you know, bring with a weed whacker rather than round that kind of stuff that can minimize that impact. This year, this is an older diagram, but it still shows it about the best. We talk about how the utilities load changes over the course of the day. So, you know, in the day, before we have a significant amount of solar, and again, a lot of this is regional as well as local, you would show as the day heated up and air conditioning load increased, so would utility load, both regionally and here in Norwich. As the region installed more and more solar, and we did as well, you get this dip actually during the day because your solar production comes on and it more than offsets the increase in demand in the community. However, as you go toward the evening hours, now the solar is starting to tail off as the sun sets, but the heat's still there and the air conditioning need is still there. And then a lot of people get home, they turn their appliances on, they turn their air conditioning up, things like that. Last year, the peak for Norwich was like 6:20 at night. It used to be 1:20 in the afternoon. And so that has really shifted. And as I talk about batteries, the advantage of the battery is you can charge the battery if you control it properly. I mean, there's emergency backup, but then also to charge it as an asset while you have this excess generation, and then discharge it when you have this peak later at night. And this smooths out the load curve and allows us to both produce and consume energy more efficiently. So that's something that I think batteries are really going to help us with. These are first generation Tesla batteries that we have with the 750 kVA or Orzo megawatt that we have with the solar system up at Stott Ave. Some things work well, some things didn't work well. First generation, just like the first generation of a car. You know, you learn from it, but it was a great experience, and I think it was definitely worth doing. All right, let's talk a little bit about our residential program, which is the lion's share of the interesting questions that we get. These are going to exclusively be, they're less than 20 kW systems, and as I go through how you size a system, we haven't had anybody come up near to maxing that out. We still do offer the option if someone did want to go greater than that for whatever reason, we could do that as a special contract. The big thing, first and foremost, is safety. You've got to have an interconnection agreement that makes sure that the solar installer follows all the proper interconnection requirements. So there's two pieces of this. That UL 1741, essentially, that's handled by the building department. We work very closely with the building department. We have a database that we share that shows the status of this and other development projects. So we know exactly where it is in the permit process. But they essentially make sure everything meets the UL listing, it is installed correctly. And then we work with the IEEE 1547, which is the standard that all electric utilities use, to make sure that if power goes out, because the tree falls and takes the lines down, that the solar system, just like a regular generator, doesn't put energy back in the system and potentially electrocute itself. And we have very extensive testing procedures in our process that make sure that that occurs properly before anything is commissioned or connected to our system. We use a wholesaler of low cost model. So remember how I talked about how if you generate energy, you use it within your home or property or business, you know, that makes sense. And so there's times when you're going to generate more than you use, more than you need. In that case, it flows back to the utility. And we pay for that. The meter tells how many electrons in the course of the month will come back to us. And we pay for that at something called the locational market price. That's the ISO New England independent system operator. They control the entire power grid for New England. And that's an index that you can look up online and know exactly what that's worth. So it's completely transparent. And again, it follows the market. It follows our avoided.
Jeff, on that, that's the one point that it stuck with me a little bit. I'm not quite sure I understand that. So if we buy electricity from CMEC, we pay, I'll just pick a number, say we pay 9 cents for electricity at CMEC, that's more than the LMP. That includes their costs and cost to get it to us. But the LMP is just the cost of the electricity that's out there in the wholesale market.
Correct.
So if I'm a producer, why wouldn't I get the same rate that CMEC gets?
It's a great question. So there's a couple of things where these systems don't necessarily work as well as a larger system does, like a solar garden or a larger commercial system that's through CMEC, and I'll talk about how those work on the next slide. But we don't necessarily know how much energy is going to come back, when it's going to come back, and then there's other costs too. We have to redistribute that to other customers. You know, there's costs associated with maintaining and operating a distribution system as well. So if you look at, for instance, you look at Eversource or Evergrid, they have adopted now the same in 2022, the same exact model that we're using. And
they're paying the LMP as well?
They set a fixed rate at 3.4 cents per kilowatt hour, period. So it doesn't follow the LMP. We felt it was better to have a track in indices because the markets are so volatile. They just pick, they'll reassess this on an annual basis. But that's, if you sign in with your system, you're actually locked into that. I've got the whole statement right here. You're actually locked into that for 20 years, which is kind of a strange concept because when you think about energy markets, and we're all dealing with these all the time, it's all over the place. So to lock into something like that for 20 years.
But 6 months ago, that was not the case. It was net metering 6 months ago.
Right. So I have a friend at work that got a solar system about a year and a half ago on his house, and I forget what company he hired to do it. He's leasing, he doesn't own any of this, okay, that kind of a thing. He told me I'm getting net metering. And I don't want to burst his bubble, but he says he's gonna be grandfathered in, so maybe he will.
So Barry Ellison, who manages our gas division, he has this on his house.
Yeah.
He does live out of town, and he gave me his whole contract, and they've essentially grandfathered him in.
Really?
Because like your friend, he installed, I forget how long ago, it was 3 years ago, I believe he did it, but it was before the rules changed. And that was the big thing that we didn't know was in question. But they were talking about this 5 years ago out in Nevada and other areas where they had more solar than we have. And the non-solar customers' subsidy of the solar customers was increasing significantly with every system. So it got to the point where it was highly inequitable. They had to do something.
Okay, now, okay, we all knew net metering was gonna end at some point. So then we're here, okay, right, now, but different communities now can pick a price where we might be more attractive than some other town if we offer 5 cents and if somebody else only offers 3.5 cents. Is that something that NPU would entertain?
So when we put this in place, we wanted to have transparency and wholesale costs. That's why we went to the ISO. We could have gone with our actual cost and based it off the CMEC number, but that is very hard for the average person to figure out what that CMEC number is very much. We could post on our website, but that is something we could do. We chose not to do the net metering for the subsidization. So it is the board prerogative to to look at that model and we'll make recommendations, but the board is the one who can discuss this and decide this.
So Chris, looking at the ISO model that we've adopted, what's the range of numbers versus the 3.5 cents that?
ISO ranges anywhere from 3.5 to 7 cents, depending on time of year market. That's what I've seen since we've been doing it. Usually at the lower end of that.
How much are we charging?
We charge standard retail rate. So anything that you use.
Right.
No, he's talking total.
Oh, okay.
Load, whatever, it's around 26.
In other words, we're giving them back, you say 3 to 3.5 cents.
Yeah.
So what are we charging for the same thing?
So this, whatever our published rate is, it's 26 cents or so.
26 cents at the moment?
I think we're 26 or 21.
We're railroad. That, yeah.
So what is that?
But that's distribution, everything else, that's not just the energy. If you're looking at just the energy, you know, the CMEC.
The other side of the town line is 36. So
Right.
the advantage here is our customers pay less, but the payback on a system like this is longer because your energy costs are lower. You go into Eversource territory, your energy costs are higher, you pay back on a solar as well. Right? So it's double edge.
And remember, the infrastructure to support a solar house is equivalent if there's no solar on the house. So it's the same size transformer, same size lines, same size substation to feed all those homes. So you know, you gotta assume that we're gonna get a week of no sun or anything else. That infrastructure needs to be paid for, by the customer.
Okay, so like in the case of my friend, he's expecting a huge savings, and this company comes in with this program, and they own all the equipment, and he's happy, he's got a laugh on his phone, and he's doing great. Now, can companies like that still do that model here in Connecticut, if everybody's now only offering, you know, whatever, 4 or 5 cents for the power?
It's gonna change the business model.
What kind of a PPA do they offer now?
So again, it's anything that's net generated from the property is 3.4 cents per kilowatt hour. That's a fixed rate. It used to be, well, for the rates, it was about 29 cents, now it's 36 cents. So there's a big difference in 3.5, it's a factor of 10.
So before, okay, let's just say the current price is 36 cents, they can come in, put up panels, use the house, be a generator, say we'll give you a PPA for 25 cents. That person's going, perfect, wow, I'm saving a ton. Now they're gonna have to jack it up to 27 or 27 or some other price, because they're not getting the net metering anymore.
One thing just to think about, and in talking with Barry, they did that with him, we're talking with the individuals that we've been working with over time. The solar installer looks to size the system capacity within roughly 10% of what your average annual monthly use, if that makes sense, of the property. So everyone is looking to size the system not to produce a significant amount of excess energy. So if I go to the, I'm going to skip a slide here, but if you look at, this is total energy that was, here it is. So this is 2022. And if you look at commercial and residential, these are the total number of megawatt hours that were generated by those systems. Those are those meters on the actual solar panels. So it's a total of 716 megawatt hours of energy. The solar gardens was over 9,000. So you get an idea of the difference in the amount. But, okay, that's increased significantly since it was only 479 in 2020. So we're going the right direction. What you notice is this number over here is the amount that was generated and produced and given back or received back by us as the utility. You notice that number stays flat. So as the installers get better at sizing systems, they're producing less excess generation because they recognize that the value is not in generating excess energy for the utility. The value, and again, it's the same here or anywhere now, the value is in offsetting their load. So 539 Norwich Ave follows the same model. Very, very little, very small amount of excess generation. Majority of that is all consumed. That's what we want to do. We want to generate it and use it at one location rather than redistributing it to others.
I'm new to this game here, but it just seems like it's not equitable to pay somebody 10% of what they're paying for the same thing without knowing anything.
Wholesale or retail, Mike, that's the big thing. So,
So, I mean, normally there isn't a 90% markup when you sell stuff. You know, or in this case, it'd be like a 1,000% markup if it's 10 times what you're paying for it.
Well, we have our cost of service here, we can't possibly.
Well, can I keep going? Thank you. So, I mean, to me, it would seem more equitable if we were pegged to the price that we pay CMEC for electricity. Maybe not, you know, the exact price because it's more expensive probably to process little bits of it here and there than to get a big shot of it from CMEC. But let's say we paid them CMEC plus a 20% handling cost or whatever. What would that come to? How did that compare to 3.5 cents?
that would be very close to LMP.
Pardon?
Gotta be what the LMP market is, essentially.
Well, I'm not sure what that means.
That's the ISO number we're using, is very consistent with the CMEC number. It's just CMEC can hedge and they can, maybe it doesn't fluctuate quite as much, but over the long haul, the average is gonna be pretty close minus those extra fees.
So it's close to what?
The LMP, what we now reimburse.
That's 3.5 to 7 cents.
Oh, it's gonna be close to 3.5.
Yeah,
So in other words,
But it's not gonna be 36.
we might be paying CMEC, like 5 cents or something like that, is that what you're saying? For electricity or some price like that?
It varies every month.
What is the range from what you've seen lately?
I don't know how much of this is an executive session discussion, but, because I have a couple thoughts, but I don't know if I want to throw them out here. But, let's take a bit thought back strategically too. Again, toward the goal that you guys talked about. And what it really is maximizing the value of solar in our community. So I always use the paper towels analogy, right? You get a lot better deal per roll when you buy, 12 pack or 24 pack or whatever. It's the same type of thing with solar. If you look at the economics of solar, and again, we're all on the same team as a community. So a solar garden, 8 megawatts, is far more efficient per electron financially than having every single roof have a 4 to 6 kilowatt system on there. So I think that's what I'm saying. It's really a strategic discussion, and I think it goes beyond this presentation, is to say, hey, how do we as an organization want to incent this potentially at the greatest value? And that's,
I mean, if 3.5 cents is roughly pegged to what we pay for, less 20%, then it's probably a reasonable number. I don't know why, but it just seems like it would be, but,
not that we want to be like the big guys, right? But when our number pencils out almost exactly the same, it kind of gives me that check to say, okay, we gotta be close.
yeah, I mean, we gotta,
And we have the ability to go higher if commodities go higher. If wholesale power goes to 20 cents, then our rates will go up to 20 cents. They're stuck at 3.2 for 20 years.
see, that's what I don't like. I mean, why not let it all?
No, the other Eversource.
Eversource is regardless of 20. If wholesale power goes up, the value of these systems goes up.
Okay, so if you have a system on your roof, whether you hire a company or you do it yourself, and you can save $200 or $300 a month, you save $3,000 a year, maybe the system costs $20,000 to put in, let me more than that, you got to call the switch area. Say it costs $30,000 to put in, it'll pay for itself in 10 years. The panels last 25 years. Hopefully the inverters don't blow every 2 years and that sort of thing. Okay, so it's still attractive to put solar on your roof, even though I agree that it's more efficient to have a solar garden and all that. Okay, so there's all kinds of people that are going to be wanting to do that, put it on their roof. So I think what you're saying is that the part about selling it back to the utility and not getting 25 or some retail rate, if you size the system properly, that shouldn't be a big part of your decision. Is that kind of what you're saying?
It's hardly even relevant if you size the system correctly.
And that would be even more the case if you have batteries to absorb the excess power.
Yes. Right. Yeah. We don't even talk about batteries.
Expensive, right?
So if it's sized right, you don't sell that much back.
Correct.
Is what you're
The
saying.
model is not to sell it back. The model is to size it appropriately for your.
So are you gonna increase the sizing then in the future to accomplish? that?
So actually what happens when we don't do it, but when you're installing contract, they look at the load. So if you have heat pumps, if you have an EV, things like that, your system gets bigger to account for that. And that's all part of the calculation at the time of installation.
So I have a couple of questions. I mean, one is to Stu. When you talk to somebody in, I don't know, Waterford or wherever you said, whatever, yeah. And they say, well, we don't go to Norwich.
Right.
And based on this discussion, I can understand, at least using the old Eversource one,
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I think
why putting rooftop solar on would be less attractive for a local resident than a resident in Ledyard or someplace.
Yeah, I think that was part of it.
But I don't understand why the company that installs solar would care. Because they're gonna sell the solar or rent the solar to people in Norwich or to Ledyard or Preston and put it on their roof. So, I mean, I don't understand why they would say, well, we don't go to Norwich when.
It's their financing more, is what it comes down to. They are going to give you a free system, and they're going to sign you up for a long-term purchase power agreement, and they're hedging that utility prices will go up, and they will make more money as the years go on. That's their business model. And if you size it appropriately, there's not a lot of sales of power.
Okay, and then my other question relates to grids. One of the things that used to occur when we all were hooked up to the grid, when we all got our power directly from the power company and didn't have solar panels on our roofs, was that there was a component in everyone's rate that covered maintenance, replacing old equipment, going out in the middle of the winter storms and putting up the wires again, service, all of those sorts of things. That was a factor in setting the rate, and everyone paid it. When you put a solar panel on your roof, that changes dramatically, because you're now only, maybe it's a storm, maybe there's clouds, I don't know what the problem is, but maybe your solar system doesn't work for a couple of days, so you hook onto the grid, and you pay that component of the overall rate for 2 days or 3 days. Everyone else pays it for 365 days. And so I think if you're looking at single family house to single family house, that's inequitable. But, you know, I grew up for the first 10 or 11 years in a triple decker with a flat roof and no central heat, by the way. And you can't put a roof on it. I can't put solar panels on top of that building. So the other equity question, I think, is not only is it equitable for people who don't put solar on their roof, but also because they're not equally sharing the cost of service and whatnot. It's especially inequitable for renters, somebody in Tapville or someplace, who doesn't have that opportunity.
50% of our clientele rent. They pay their own utilities, the landlord does not pay utilities, so there's no incentive for a utility or landlord ever to put solar on a new apartment.
Except that it would help him keep his tenants. Because they could afford to stay there.
Yeah, if that was his business
I
model,
know
yes.
people that are building properties and they put a premium on keeping the utility costs down when they do it. You know, they want to make sure the building's well insulated and that they put the proper appliances in to accomplish that. And a lot of investors that are smart stay away from inefficient buildings.
But when you look at West Ledge, you look at Pima Mills, nobody's talking about solar. They're talking about other things like electric vehicle charging stations to attract customers. Nobody's putting solar out. They're doing high efficiency. They're taking care, you know, using our rebates to get high efficiency equipment in there, but they're not adding solar. Haven't seen
Well,
one.
maybe that's a bridge too far for them to accomplish that. Right now.
Public comment, at this point, or is that not the case?
Yeah, the public comment is over. I can violate protocol.
No, that's
I was-
fine. No, I'd like to do this.
Okay, go ahead.
Norwich Public Utilities has a public relations problem around this issue, and I'm not sure why. The scuttlebutt out there, and I'm subject to that, is that, oh, you gotta have a battery, they won't do business with you, they won't buy it back at a reasonable rate. It sounds to me like you guys are doing roughly what other communities are doing, but that word is not out there. I think you've got a public relations problem, and I'm subject to that.
Some of it may be left over
I
from
don't,
differences in the past, right?
well, maybe North Public Utilities gotta say, hey, we're different now. Somehow, some way to the community, I'm not sure. There is a perception problem, I think.
Oh, there's the perception and there's the reality.
Yeah.
In a community of 40,000, there are 20 people that have solar.
Yeah,
And that's, so to suggest that we're not meeting their needs, is just, there's just not the interest in it. In addition, every single customer is getting a significant portion of their electricity from renewable sources without putting something temporary on their roof, without putting any extra money on their bill.
Yeah.
So between hydro and the solar gardens, more than 12 or 15% of our power that we provide is renewable.
Wonderful.
For free.
Wonderful.
So to suggest that we have a public relations problem guess public relations person, I didn't experience it. Is just inaccurate.
Okay.
There's just not the
What
demand.
is it that I'm picking up out there?
20 people.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, it's just not that big an issue in Norwich.
I think it's not that big an issue, because the perception out there is you can't do it in Norway. We're doing it, I'm complaining. Okay, I may be wrong,
So we have 20 NPU right now, in the queue.
okay.
What we're finding is people are not marketing, so they're looking for volume. So when they're out there, just like anything, when you're selling something, they're looking at that volume. They want to go house to house and say, just like you ever see the paving, when someone's paving, they're going to segment where you're going to get the most. And that's what we have found. So we're doing business with certain continuous contractors. We're not getting 20 different ones. We're getting probably 5 of the same, because that's what they're doing. They're marketing in this area.
And what kind of business would provide an incentive to a customer to use less of their product? Right?
Yeah.
We're in the business of selling electricity. Solar advocates are in the business of using less of our product.
Yes.
So there's two sides.
Absolutely.
Well, I would guess one of the other factors, I don't know that it's decisive, but one of the other factors is that we're about 20% cheaper than Eversource. So putting a solar panel on your roof is a mathematical equation. And if the savings for regular power, grid power, is greater, then it's going to impact the economics of putting panels.
Yeah, we're not seeing enough.
If you've got a solar, if you're entirely solar and you run into an issue during an ice storm, do you want to take care of it, or do you want to have regular power and have our guys get the lights back on in 2 hours? And without paying a premium, without having something bolted on your roof, and without dealing with a contract from someone that you've got to call an 800 number and wait on hold for 45 minutes when you don't have any electricity.
Believe me, I understand the value of Norwich Public Utilities, and I am a very vocal supporter of Norwich Public Utilities in all of those areas. Believe me, and I'm grateful.
So if I may make a comment, I inquired of 2 companies to get some solar panels on my house. And both of them did say they don't do business in Norwich. I think one was Sun Power and the other was Tesla. So Mary Lou says that's not true. I don't know. All I know is I called them and that's what they told me. So I'm wondering if we could have some sort of an information process where we could find out who actually does and just say, hey, here's the list, if somebody wants to find out. So at least, we wouldn't be like stonewalling. We wouldn't be like stonewalling people that want information. We could at least provide, they're not going to become an island. They're still going to use Norwich Public Utilities. They're still going to get water. A lot of them are still going to get natural gas. I know I am. The bigger picture is it's going that way anyway. And in my opinion, I think maybe we could come up with a way to at least be a source of information for people that want to find out more about it.
Mike, if somebody calls up our solar department and says, hey, can you tell us some people who do business in town? We will say, we can tell you, but we're not saying we are recommending vendors because that is a very slippery slope.
But people don't know that you can call up and get that information.
There's a lot of information on our website.
That would be marketing our competition.
Well, if you don't want to do it, that's being honest.
But we want electric revenue to go up. And more solar customers is going to make electric revenue go down.
But we bragged about,
But
we bragged about putting in all these streetlights that cost us $750,000.
State and city, $350,000.
And we bragged about going to a big, the furniture place up in Taft, Bob's.
Hundreds of jobs.
Well, I understand that, but
we are in support of bringing value to our customers. We are not in support of subsidizing an external entity that's gonna take money from the community for a stakeholder, shareholder outside the community.
So
That's the bottom.
So one question that relates to this whole marketing question is whether Stu and Mike talked to solar firms before Eversource changed its compensation program, because that's going to change the math. So, I mean, if you talk to them, I don't know when the Eversource thing happened, but talk to them a year ago, and if there was excess power, it sold for 29 cents or 30 cents or whatever the number is. That made out of town opportunities a lot more attractive than in town opportunities.
I talked to Tesla a few weeks ago,
Okay.
but they did say that they were gonna come to an auction.
They may not have, they may be thinking of something they learned 2-3 years, you know, doesn't necessarily.
Yeah,
mean they're-
no, they did say that they were planning to come to an auction.
Well,
We have a Tesla Powerwall installed, so we know they're here.
as I was saying, it's more about their marketing, not so much our marketing. They have taken a look of where they can make the most money in a confined area. And that's what they do, they market those areas. As I said, we're seeing the same solar companies that are doing business. It's not 20 different ones, it's a handful. Some are better than others. You know, we see the results, we see the cost of these systems. Once again, we try to help the customer by streamlining between the building department and ourselves. I'll pass out, give you this sheet as well. We make it as simplistic as possible. You deal with one person through the process that coordinates everything for you. So, you know, we have done a lot over many years to improve it.
And just for what it's worth, Tesla does own the community solar garden. So they do have
Right,
some
so,
involvement here.
Well, we don't wanna do any less than Eversource is doing, I don't think. Now that they're kind of leveling off on what they're doing. You know, you can't jip the ratepayers. They're paying the full freight by, you know, paying too much back to the people that are using these outside stakeholders either. It's a balancing act. Right, I do think that, you know, you have to take the larger view of what's good for the carbon footprint of the country at large, and as well as our city, and, you know, make a reasonable effort to help people get there. Certainly at least as much, I mean, if we have a perception problem, maybe we're not blaming Chris or anybody, but maybe we're not. Maybe we're technically not offering what the other people are offering, or maybe we weren't before, and now we are, but people just don't know we are now.
Yeah, Mike, we made a serious decision not to offer what they were offering before because of that subsidization. Now, we are providing much more value than the standard offer of Eversource.
I think people don't understand that and don't know that. I didn't know it myself until just now. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
So,
And they're not really,
it's probably a false perception out there.
Eversource is not going out in the news and saying, hey, we no longer offer this program anymore. This is, you call up Eversource and that's what you get when you call. They're not advertising that they're, you know, changing their whole model.
Yeah.
You know, I think, and this goes back to my days in the triple decker, next door to the Build-A family, by the way. But Norwich is a relatively poor community. We have a lot of people who rent, and a lot of people who rent in what are not lavish apartments. You know, you can walk and chew gum at the same time, but I think what we ought to be really focusing on is see whether we can get some additional solar gardens built in various places. The tip of Hollyhock Island was targeted at one point as a potential location for a solar garden that would add power, green power, to the entire grid and would benefit poor people as well as rich people. And also, you know, contribute to the tax base of the city and so forth and so on. don't think, as I say, I don't think you should not walk and chew gum at the same time, but I think that's by far the most important thing for us to do in this kind of a city.
At the completion of the sewer plant upgrade, we're gonna cap that landfill, and the best use of that property is to put a solar field on top.
That helps everybody.
Yeah.
The poor, the rich, everybody, the middle class. Because, the people that get solar, they're not gonna be the more impoverished folks. They're not gonna be the ones that get it. But if we pay too much back to them, then, the disenfranchised people are probably subsidizing, more wealthy people's electricity too. You don't want that, for sure.
Great thing about being a municipal utility, we're dynamic, we're nimble, we can make changes when they make sense. We can have discussions like this, and work directly with our customers, and that's huge. So it kind of brings us to conclusion here, and I think really what we talked about, we're going to continue to do everything that we can to support installations. Economics will continue to improve too. Technology drives efficiency, drives renewables, drives everything. As it continues to improve, those economics are going to continue to improve. And we didn't talk a lot about large scale projects, but there are potential for those as well. And that's something that we do work with CMEC on. So source with them for our project.
So we're keeping with that. The economics might change. There might be a big increase in the efficiency of panels going forward. Whatever. Prices of batteries come down. May not happen for 100 years, but there could come a point where people do make their own electricity, and our model, buying electricity from CMEC and distributing it, just doesn't quite work anymore. That's probably way out. But all I would ask is that NPU, keep an eye on the technology and where the markets are going and what other towns are doing, neighboring towns. And if there's a push where all of a sudden Waterford is attracting young people that we want for reasons having to do with solar power or whatever, and we're not, that we just stay on top of it so that we're not missing out. Electric Boat is getting back almost to the employment levels of when I first started. There were 24,000. They got down as low as 9,000. They're back to 21,000. So they're hiring. So there's an opportunity for young people who are, could add to Norwich, add to the value of Norwich, the property values, and would be willing, because they're young people and they think differently than you and I perhaps, and they are interested in solar power. We just want to make sure that we're there for them and not putting up any roadblocks. Even though it takes away from our business, I know that, but that's what people want. That's where they're gonna go. Whatever they want to do, it's up to us to follow the public to a certain degree.
Support it in a fair and equitable way.
That's the end of the presentation.
Yes.
All right, thank you. And I wanted to thank Dave Burnett and his son for contributing tonight to that. Thank you very much. All right, we also have the FY24 budget presentation. Chris, how do we want to lead this off? Of course, it's Laura. It has to be Laura. Nobody else does the budget.
So I'm passing out a copy of the budget for you. You did receive a version of this earlier this month, however, full disclosure, I made a mistake. In the original version that you did receive via email, I had included the draft information for the payment to the city. This includes the final audited numbers. It changed by $60,000 on a $100 million budget, so not a big deal. All right, let's see if I can manage the technology as well as Jeff. Which one am I pointing it at?
That one, just do it.
Okay, there we go. Okay, so in overview, the fiscal 24 budget. This budget includes funds that are necessary to continue to support our priorities, economic development in Norwich, proactively investing in our aging infrastructure, meeting or exceeding our local, state, and federal regulatory requirements, exceeding our customers' expectations for customer service and reliability, and deploying our technology for the continued benefit of NPU and the city. Fiscal 24 budget, we began this process with presentations for our budget drivers with the Finance and Audit Committee for gas, electric, water, sewer administration, and our support areas. And this was February 13th and February 21st, where we went in detail in all of those areas. So the budget summary, revenues, we are forecasting $112 million for revenues for fiscal year 24. Those forecasted revenues are in the budget, and our actual revenue increases will be developed as part of the cost of service study that is currently in process. Fiscal 24 expenditures for operations are about $107.8 million. Our net income is budgeted at $4.3 million. NPU will be excuse me, we'll be utilizing $1.88 million of our cash balances for expenditures and capital investments in fiscal year 24. And we'll also be funding our sinking fund, and this is in our sewer division, with $1.23 million of our cash balances. One of the biggest expenditures annually is our payment to the city. As I mentioned before, this is a small change from the previous budget that you received, a little over $9.1 million in fiscal year 24. And this is based on our fiscal 22 audited revenues for the natural gas, electric, and water divisions. Over the past 10 years, we've generated over $85 million in revenue to the city. And in fiscal 24, this reduces the city taxpayer burden by just under 4.4 mils. And as you can see, based on our chart, we did see a dip in our payment to the city the last couple of years, and that was the impact of COVID, but we're trending upward again. One of the biggest drivers in our budget is our wholesale energy costs. Purchased gas is budgeted at $5.6 million in fiscal year 24, and purchased power at $3.5 million. Purchased gas, we're seeing increased commodity expenses but lower supply volumes. We also did extend our AMA contract in the fall of 2022, and this extension brings us out through October of 25. This AMA extension increased the credit that we're going to receive due to the value of our assets by $9 million over this 2-year term that we're currently in. And for purchase power, we are seeing increased costs driven in part by the natural gas market. We're also forecasting load increases in this fiscal 24. We are using slightly less money from the rate stabilization fund. It's decreased by about $830,000. Okay. Fiscal 24 staffing includes 152 employees budgeted for fiscal 24 at a little over $18 million. We have one additional position, it's an engineering position. And our current employees, 137 employees. We're actively working to fill 14 vacant positions as I put this together, but I did find out that we have a new employee starting the beginning of April, so 13 vacant positions that Michelle is very busy actively working on. Employee benefits are budgeted at $6.7 million for fiscal year 24. Health insurance at a little over $3 million. Pension is $1.44 million. Again, with the pension obligation bonds, the expenditures there are moved from the employee benefits and into debt service and interest expense. The net impact is a flat expense for year over year for fiscal 24. And our OPEB contribution for 24 is $750,000, and that's our actuarial determined employer contribution. And that's that calculation that's updated every year. Okay.
Laura?
Yes.
You mentioned our actuarial determined contribution.
Yes, the ADEC.
But we also have a position in the loan that they took.
So the ADEC, that's focused on the OPEB, which is our other post-employment benefits. That's our health insurance. That's not the pension. Two separate items.
I understand that.
Mm-hmm.
But on the pension,
yes.
I guess my question is, does our actuarial contribution include the debt service on the line of credit that the city took out to pay for the unfunded liabilities in the pension fund? Or is that a separate line item?
So the expenditures that we have budgeted, we have the pension expense, which is that ADEC. And then we also have the pension obligation bond that we are responsible to repay to the city. So that combination in fiscal 24 is the same level of expense in fiscal 23. If we had not gone through the pension obligation bonds, that would have gone up higher. So fortunately, we're seeing some impact, positive impact from the pension obligation.
I'm not suggesting it was right or wrong. All I'm asking is, does the number that we see just include the actuarial payments, or does it also include the debt service for the debt?
The debt service is in the budget, it's in a different line item.
Okay.
It's not in the benefits line item, it's in the debt service line item. I'm sorry if I misunderstood your original question.
So if we look at fiscal 23 budget versus fiscal 24 budget, there's a almost $3 million difference.
Yep, correct. And you'll see that $3 million difference under the debt service and interest expense section of the budget.
Okay.
So taxes, 2.26 million in fiscal year 24. Our gross revenues tax is about a little over 2.1 million. And that is significantly reduced from previous years as NPU is no longer subject to gross revenues tax in the gas division, which saves our customers just shy of $1 million on an annual basis. And property tax of about 140,000. Insurance is budgeted at just under 2.4 million for fiscal year 24, and this includes our premiums for our excess liability, property, vehicles, workers' comp, damage claims, directors and officers, and our newly acquired cyber insurance. We're also anticipating potential additional coverage for pollution that will enhance our existing coverage, and looking at that for fiscal year 24. O&M expenses for fiscal year 24 are budgeted at just under 8.8 million. Again, we did our detailed deep dive for all 4 divisions with our Finance and Audit Committee, but overall expenditures for O&M focus on safety, reliability, and regulatory driven expenses across all 4 divisions. For each of the areas, specific focuses include maintaining, repairing, and operating our gas infrastructures very safely. Big driver in the electric division always is the tree trimming expenditures. In the water division, compliance, permit compliance, and our leak detection survey and lead and copper road compliance. In the sewer, maintaining our NIPD's permit regulation requirements, and then also the process of beginning work on so that we are set up for that wastewater treatment plant upgrades. We have some significant projects happening across the organization. Customer service and metering, it's a little over $1 million for that budget for fiscal year 24. The bigger impact there is our cost for payment processing fees, our outside services cost, which includes our print and mailing for all of our customer statements, and ongoing costs for collections and legal services. General and administrative costs, we went through this again also in detail at our Finance and Audit Committee meetings, budgeted for fiscal year 24 at 4.4 million. This includes items such as software, our technical services, utilities, telecommunications, office supplies, consulting, legal services, our safety program, which we have enhanced this year, our annual audit, advertising, outreach, and our utility trade association memberships. As part of the budget, for the board expenditures, we use our recently approved economic development policy in order to calculate the funding for NCDC, utilizing the forecasted revenues, PPA, and PGA. We've taken 0.94% of that. That is our total economic development budget of $656,000. 37.5% of that is the contribution to NCDC. So in this budget, the contribution to NCDC is $246,000. So total board expenses for fiscal year 24, inclusive of economic development, are $694,000. $656,000 based on our economic development policy. Additional expenses include training, conferences, seminars, legal expenditures, and governance.
And training this year, in addition to the APA conference, the NEPA conference is going to be located in Groton at the Mystic Marriott. And so, while we always encourage board members to attend, this is a little easier this year than most.
All right, thanks for that. Where's the golf going to
I don't know that
be?
yet.
Is there golf? Is there going to be?
There's always a golf tournament, but I did not look and see what course they do play.
Other operating expenses include our energy efficiency programs at about $860,000, our forecast depreciation a little over $10 million, and our bad debt expense at $3.865 million. Capital investment is significant fiscal year 24 budget. We have anticipated $48.66 million. The biggest driver there is our wastewater treatment plant at $31 million. And again, we went in detail on these projects over the 4 divisions at our finance and audit committee meetings. So again, significant focus on capital infrastructure investment. Funding for a good portion of that is coming through grants and loans, $13.9 million worth of grants, our clean water and drinking water grants. The other grants listed there are the 2 funding sources that we have, the congressionally directed funding, that's $800,000 in the water division and $800,000 in the sewer division. Loans at a little over $26.7 million. Again, the loan portion of the program for our drinking water and clean water. We're also looking at potential loan funding of some technology infrastructure. Oh, went too fast. There we go. So next steps. We will be presenting the budget overview for NPU to City Council on April 10th. And we would look to the board to vote on the budget either in the April or May meeting. Once it's approved, it will be forwarded to the city and it will be included in the annual city budget, and which will be approved by the City Council. Generally, that takes place in the first week of June.
So if you have any questions tonight for Laura and staff, in the next month, feel free to reach out to us. Let us know if there's any questions that we can answer. And we'll also open up the next board meeting for additional questions and discussion on the budget.
Okay.
So I was just looking at our proposed budget, and if you eliminate the sewer revenue, which is not subject to the 10% city portion, we could be over $10 million in 2024.
First time.
It would be the first time, absolutely.
Yeah, and this is budget. Volatility of the markets, if something else causes gas and electric prices to go up, it could be even higher than what we're budgeting. Right now, we're taking a relatively conservative approach to those revenues.
But that wouldn't happen for 2 years, is that right?
The fiscal 24 audited revenues would impact the fiscal 26 payment to the city. So correct.
Yeah. Those have that lag.
All right, thank you, Laura. Any questions, any additional questions or comments on the budget presentation?
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Laura.
We've gone to an almost $100,000, $100 million budget to over 110.
Wow. Okay, that brings us to agenda item 8, which is executive session. I will entertain a motion to go into executive session. So, thank you, Michael. Second. Bill, William, all right, is there any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay.
Aye. Aye.
Are there any abstentions? All right, the motion carries. We're in executive session.